Innan vi börjar så ska jag bara dra några sådana här informationspunkter som man alltid drar när man presenterar saker från den här scenen. Nämligen att seminariet kommer att webbsändas. Ni ser kameran där borta. Och spelas in. Den som vill twittra härifrån kan lägga upp det på hashtaggen sommartorg. Hashtag sommartorg, det är för den som vill twittra. Det kommer att bli tid för frågor från publiken sen. Vi har ett upplägg där vi har tänkt oss att Moe Toei, som är från Burma, från en organisation som heter Generation Wave, kommer att börja. Vi kommer att hålla det här på engelska för att Moe är här och för att han ska kunna ta del i diskussionen i sin helhet också. So I will turn to English now and I will introduce you, Moe. You come from this organization called Generation Wave, which I personally, as I have followed Burma for many years, find as a very interesting organization, since you've been in exile for many years and now you have returned. And it will be very interesting to hear a few words about your experience of the situation now for both Generation Wave and the situation in Burma / Myanmar, whatever you call it right now.
So, you mean that I have to start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm first of all, I want to say that I'm really excited and really happy and glad to meet you all here. And I'm here now. So my name is Mo Thuy, and I am the co-founder and also the president of the activist organization called Generation Wave. And we started in October 2007. 1 month after the Saffron Revolution. So in that Saffron Revolution, we, all of our members, involved as the individual youth. So at the time, to be honest, that we didn't really know anything about the politics, and only thing encouraged us to involve in the revolution is that we just hate the injustice, because we witnessed, we saw the soldier. Our own soldier killing our own people, our own monks and students and youth in the street, and then they arrest many of the youth. And in that Saffron Revolution, only thing what we really demand is to lower down the fuel price, because there was a fuel hike in the August 2007. So that after that Saffron Revolution, that we had some meeting among our friends, and then we thought that we thought this is really unfair. And even though we know there was a military regime before, but we didn't really feel ourselves. Even though we had a lot about the 88 uprising and repression by the military government, but we didn't really feel ourselves. And so that in 2007 we really experienced ourselves, and then we thought that we are responsible to find the justice for our country and to fight for the people's freedom. So that we found our organization Generation Wave, and we did a lot of the underground activities. So it's like we throw the pamphlets in the public place and in the bazaars, in the concert. So we did underground, and then also we use music a lot, because many of us are also involving in the music industry. For myself, I am the composer, and I also sing rock songs. And one of my friends is the hip hopper. So he was also the co-founder, and he is now he became the member of parliament. And he is very close to Aung San Suu Kyi. He is the secretary of Aung San Suu Kyi for the parliamentary affairs. His name is Yato. So we also use the music as the tool, and we recruit the youth by the underground meetings, and we conduct very small training about the human rights and about the non-violent activities. So we are really inspired by the youth movement from the Xavier called the Otpon. So those group take lead to take down the Milosevic, the digital Milosevic. And then, so during those years that many of our members were arrested. 27 of our members were arrested, and many had to flee to Time Burmese border, including me. So some of our members were arrested for 37 years, and some were arrested for some were sentenced for the 15 years. But luckily that they all released after 2012 because there was a change after 2010. So now in 2011 December we came back from the time Burmese border, and then all of our underground members also come to the above ground. So we continue our political activity publicly according to the new situation, because that we have more space for the freedom of expression and freedom to association. But even though we can speak out now, even though we can form the association now, but it is still not legal. But there are a lot of repressive law, so can arrest anytime. So and now so after we came back to Yangon and to Burma, that we focus on the peace, and because that according to the 2008 constitution, that we know that it is not possible for the to build the peace, because it is really unfair, and the 25% of military is taking seat in the parliament, and also 3 ministers for the defense and interior and border security. So even though they are the government is saying now that they are transforming the country, but it is very obviously that still the military region is in the power. So that we are trying to change now. That now we are focusing about the peace and political rights. So in this year, that what we are doing is we organize the many different kinds of the peace activities, including the peace march in 2012 September. So we are taking part in that organizing committee, and then 2 of our members, including me, were charged by the 10 different townships, and we are also organizing some other like peace activity. Like we have our own slogan for the peace, that let the flowers bloom, but not bullets. So we use that slogan by many ways. Like we print T-shirts and we print stickers, and we also make music, and sometimes we make the concert. So and raising the peace awareness in our country, and we are also cooperating with some of the civil rights movement. For example, like there was a very big mining project up in Upper Burma, so that we also fight for that. I myself that involved in many organizations, many protests, many demonstrations, and also charged by 9 different cases. So that in 2012 and in 2013, I was charged for 19 different cases. And then it is really lucky for me to be here now, because that I applied my passport since August 2012, but I only got it in this month. They postponed my passport without any reason, because I am having a lot of I'm involved in a lot of the political activity. So this is the brief history of our organization and what we are doing now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You describe a situation where, well, some things has improved, and you can be there and you can be active, but you have also been charged, you said, 19 times for 2 years?
Yes.
But never sentenced to prison?
Yes, I was. In 2012 December, I organized some demonstration against the crackdown in mining project, so that I was arrested with violence in the street. So at that time, I was arrested for 9 days in the solitary confinement, and after 9 days, that they released me on bail. So I had to appear at the court for more than 200 times for all those 19 cases. And in last year, December, I was sentenced for 3 of the cases. So I was sentenced for 1 month.
Okay.
So, but luckily that I was released after 20 days, because there was the SEA Game, so Southeast Asian Games. So for the opening of that game, they saying president release. So that actually, until now, the government is still using the political prisoners as something to deal with the international.
Yeah.
Whenever international pressure comes, they release some political prisoner, and when the situation is calm, they arrest them. They are using us like the money, like the banknote. When they want to buy, something from Indonesia. They use this
see,
note.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know how many political prisoners there are now?
I think that there are still more than 60 to between 60 to 100 political prisoners. But some of their cases are the controversial because that they have contact with the ethnic M group. So even though the government is saying that they are making the peace building among the ethnics, but they are still containing those people who relating with the ethnic groups.
But I will just ask you one more question, and then we will give the word to the panel. But in the same time, when I was in Yangon the last time, I opened a magazine and I read about you actually, and about Generation Wave, which was impossible 4 years ago.
Yes.
So it's in all cases that must be an improvement that you actually are able to work there right now.
Yes. Yeah, actually, there are some improvement we can call improvement, but at the same time, we need to consider why the military regime itself want to go forward, want to open up, because to my opinion, that they are really isolated for many decades, and they already sold out almost all of our resources. They have no way to, continue in their former time, so that they have to make some deal. And and luckily that they have got one partner. Maybe one or two partner like EU and US. US also really, to my opinion, that they also really worry that if China would influence more and more to our country, so that US also want to change their diplomacy, so that this is a good time for everyone. So also, especially for the former regime, so that they can make a lot of deal, and they just we will give the freedom of expression, media, freedom of association, but at the same time, they are still arresting some critical groups.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to the panel, who consists of Michaela Friberg-Storey and Eva Werner-Dahlin from SIDA. Sorry, you are from
Folke Academy.
Exactly. And Christopher Burnett-Cargill from Svenska Freds, which has an English name as well, but I never remember it.
Swedish Peace and Arbitration Society.
That's the one, yes. And I will first of all ask Michaela, maybe you can describe with a few words what your interest in Burma, Myanmar is now, and how do you look upon the situation Moe is describing here?
Thank you, Jesper, and thank you, Moe, for painting this picture, which is a divided picture with a sad history and hopefully a bright future. I think from the Folke Bernadotte perspective, we've been engaged in the Burmese and Myanmar context over the past couple of years. And what we see currently are basically three parallel and mutually interactive, not always reinforcing processes. We see the democratization process where the current petition for a amendment in the constitution of the paragraph 436, which gives the veto right to the army as they constitute 25% of the parliament, as the key current aspect of the democratization process. The second process is, of course, the peace process with the ceasefire negotiations, where we don't have a strong nationwide ceasefire that could lead into a peace process, and this is absolutely key. And the second process that the country is trying to engage in and undergoing is the transition to market economy. And all of these three processes in parallel, sometimes reinforcing, and sometimes maybe not even pulling in the same direction, is an enormous challenge for its populations, and of course also for the government and for those in the government who want to make change. I'm not saying that's everyone, but there are those that want to have a forward looking. And I think it's really important how we as the international community currently engages, and how we see these three different processes interact, and how we engage in them, and how we make them play with each other. From our perspective, one of the most important engagement sector is the security sector. And let me be very clear here that I'm not talking only about the armed forces. I'm talking about the armed forces, about the police, about the justice system, about civil society's role in a dialogue with the authorities, and of course also the prison and probation service. And it's about creating a democratic security sector. And that will, the key reform to that, as we see it currently, is the amendment to the Constitution and the paragraph 436, which currently has 3.3 million, according to some sources, signatories to this petition. And that's a different paragraph than the paragraph that can allow Dao to become president if she was to win. But that's a different discussion. This is about who sits in the parliament. And we believe this is the key to the current democratic process.
Okay. You say that they are linked to each other, these different aspects of the democratization process. But what Mo is pointing to is that maybe the key factor is the Constitution, and everything else might actually be in place without the change in real power.
Well, I think it's important to remember also that when we talk about the economy in the country, it's the world's second largest heroin and opium producer. And those forces that gain money on this production, it's not sure that they will benefit from peace. And we've seen this in other contexts as well, that opium production is sometimes a conflict facilitates opium trade. And there is therefore a risk that as we try to create jointly with the people and the government, of course, a functioning market economy, there are very strong forces that will work towards having a continued instability and especially very open borders to gain.
Eva, you work at SIDA, who's been very active in Burma for the past 3 years, I think. What do you say about this different prospects they talk about?
Well, good morning, everyone. I very much agree on the analysis that Michaela made on that there are different processes going on and they interact in between. At SIDA, we see it as a democratization and peace-building process. And part of that is also, part of this process is also the state building, and it's just starting. It's just on the starting point. So we have to see this in a very long-term perspective. And when we talk, you mentioned the ceasefire. That is also a very important condition for the upcoming elections in 2015. And what will happen with the possibility to have a free and fair election in 2015 if there are still local conflicts in the country. And also, in terms of democratization and reform process, the lack of action against what you talked about, violence against Muslims and other ethnic groups, is also a very critical factor. And I also would like to mention, as you, Michaela, the necessity of a security sector reform. And of course, that is based on an analysis of the role of the militaries in the future. And that seems to be very conflictive, and we really need to build much more knowledge on the different groups within the militaries, because some are reform friends and some are not. And also linked to that, in the future, or at least in medium term, reform of the justice sector seems to be very important. But as you mentioned, Jesper, there are also some very positive signs. The media and the relatively free press is a very important factor for the process. And SIDA has been very active in that sector.
Christopher.
Yeah.
Svenska Freds has been active for also like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, 3-4 years.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
What is your experience of working there?
No, I would like to start also to agree with a lot that's been said right now, but I would like to give you 2 pictures from what I have gotten when I come there, when I meet with our Burmese friends, and I usually ask the question, has there been change? Because when we sit here in Sweden and we talk internationally, everybody's saying things are changing in Burma. So I have to ask the question, is it changing? And the answer is always, yes, change, but no real change. And or they might answer, it's a fake change. Or some might say it's a change for tactical reasons only. And I think it's important to understand this, that it is not yet a real change. And but then if you ask the second question to many of our Burmese friends, they always say that, but we want to take this small chance. There is a small slight chance that things might start changing. So we want to work on this. We want to develop on this, and we want to make this an irrevocable process. So I mean, that's the hope, and that's the sign. But I think it's important to understand the military are still in power. There is no democracy yet in Burma. There's no peace yet in Burma. It's very important to understand these issues. So, and the other picture I want to tell you when it comes to understanding the tactical reasons. I'm sure you also noticed when you come to the airport in Burma, you drive into the city and you meet people outside of the cars selling things and distributing things. And I will never forget one of the guys, or many guys actually, handing out a paper, or actually a booklet, where it said the foreign investment law.
Yeah.
So that was what they were giving out, us coming into the airport. The change from the regime's perspective is about economic interests. It is about getting foreign investments into the country. That's the real interest from them. Just a few points I would like to put forward from what we do and what to add on to the good things that already have been said. And I think I would like to stress also what's said here, that the absolute biggest challenge right now is the constitutional reform. That sets the basis for almost everything. So you have to understand that if you go to the parliament in Burma and you look inside there, 25% of the seats are militaries.
Most of the others are former military.
And I was going to say that the biggest political parties are militaries that took off the military clothes and put on suits, sitting there. So, I mean, this has to change if there's any chance for a real democratic process moving forward. Regarding the ceasefire agreements and the peace process, I think we have to understand also that the ceasefire agreements are not peace agreements. Just like Michaela was saying, ceasefire agreements is only a beginning that can start maybe a peace process that can lead to peace agreements. And here, and this is my final point, it's absolutely crucial that civil society actors are participating in this process, that you can create this dynamics where there's not only peace talks and peace agreements between the regime and military leaders, but it also involves civil society actors like Generation Wave, like others. And this is what we are trying to do at Svenska Freds. We are working with 10 to 15 different peace organizations inside of Burma in order to, on capacity building, of course, we have partnerships with them, we learn from each other, but try to build this sort of participation in the peace process, basically. That is the aim and that's the goal. I'll come back to some other points later, but these are the major things.
Just to make a few pedagogic points here, Burma is consisting of a number of ethnic groups, and there has been a civil war actually there has been a civil war going on since 1948, and there has been different ceasefires over the years, and the ones you describe now is as a process that started maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But there was also a number of ceasefires closed in the 90s, from 94 and onwards, and they have never transformed into peace, even though they actually started as ceasefires 20 years back.
Yeah.
So that might be a point to describe the problematic situation. Yeah. Moe, how would you, do you have any comments to the comments?
To the comment to the comment.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, I really agree with what the other people said about the constitution. It is the most important thing for our country now, because there will be the general election in the elections in the 2015, but to hold a free and fair election in the country, that also the ground should be the free and fair space. So that since since there is the 25% of the parliamentarian who doesn't need to be elected, is stay in the power, so that it is not really free and fair. But what our opposition want now is, we don't mean that they have to go out now. We also understand their fear. They also have their fear that because they have done a lot of mistake to the people and the country of people and this country, so that they are also afraid to be, to be punished again. So that they want to put some of their groups in the government, in the power. So we can understand that. But the problem is, there must be some way to reduce some way out for the military. So that the only possible way is to amend the constitution. So we still have some of the opposition group who want to abolish the constitution and make the new one. But even though I'm the very critical activist, but I don't agree about that, because that it will be more conflict for the both and for the people. So that we now mainly working on the amending the constitution. So the fourth reason is the amendment procedure of the constitution. So that in that fourth reason, that without the agreement from the military, we cannot amend the constitution. It means that the military is holding the constitution. So holding the whole situation, whatever all the international, US or UN or EU, whatever they say that Burma is changing, it is not true. We are just trying to change. But for this change, that I think we need some key points we need some international help and pressure to amend the constitution to the government. And at the same time, that I think that this is only for the short time, because I also really consider about those religious conflict and also about the peace process. So to my experience, I'm also involved in many of the youth movements. So to my experience, that we have very difficult it is very difficult to organize all the ethnic to feel that this is their nation. So because I'm also working with the Kachin, Chin, and Shan, those ethnics, and most of the time in our networks, that they are just focusing about their only particular region, and they are thinking that we are discriminated all the time. They don't feel that this is the whole country is them. So that my point is that first, I would like to encourage all the international countries to help and support the Burma to amend the constitution. This is for the current situation, and also help to the election monitoring for 2015. And for the long term, for the sustainable, like the state building, sustainable future, that we really need to empower the youth. And we really need to change our education system. For those religious conflict and then the racist movement and discrimination, a lot of the international countries are blaming and criticizing our country. You are very racist. This country is a lot of hatred spreading in the country. I agree. I accept that. But the reason of those hatred is because of we were under very cruel, very brutal military regime for 5 decades. We didn't have chance to express our opinion. We didn't have chance to access to the good education. We didn't have chance to build our business. So we were in the poverty for 5 decades. So I think that to have the real peace and real, like the real transition, we need the education a lot, both civil society, people, and also the government.
Yeah.
No, I think one of the things that you mentioned about continued international pressure on the Myanmar government to actually amend the constitutions to then allow for a democratic process is absolutely key, because what's happening with the foreign direct investment that's coming, that absolutely flowing into the country at an immense speed, where a lot of global companies, some of them also Swedish, are now investing. And the question is, if progress is not continued in the country, and we instead see that it starts moving back again, are those companies willing to withdraw and lose that investment? Or what's going to happen then? And that's why I think it's so important that we use all our political weight to continue the pressure of moving forward, because we have lifted the sanctions from the EU perspective and allowed for this to happen, and we need to make sure that it's not a backlash that where the price is then paid on by the citizens. And just to mention one thing as it relates to the Rohingya minority, not only in the Rakhine state, but of course mainly there, this has regional implications as well. And what's happening in Thailand currently, what's happening in Bangladesh with the new government in India, we cannot see the situation for the Rohingyas as something that Myanmar has to deal with or address, because this can have much wider regional implications and add to the sometimes strained relationship between Muslim communities and non-Muslim communities and vice versa in this region. So I think it's very important to see this as a regional aspect.
Yes, thank you. Moya, you talked about the participation of the young people, and SIDA is trying to have different programs to support the civil society, and among them groups of young people, and also a lot of networks formed by women. Because we see that there's a need for more inclusiveness of the youth and the women in the process. But I would like to ask you, since we have one of our three main objectives for the presence and the development cooperation in Myanmar is to improve the participation. How would you like to see the external support to the civil society, and especially young people and women?
From the Swedish government? Yeah, I think that we are now also doing the education reform. So it is also in the parliament. It is a debate. The Aung San Suu Kyi also involved in that new education policy. So that I think that Sweden, it will be really nice that Sweden also involved in the education sector, reform sector, and also the youth. There are a lot of the youth movement since 2012. So we are also involved in a lot. That's first Myanmar Youth Forum we organized in December 2012. I think SIDA also support for that youth forum. And after that youth forum, that we established our nationwide youth network called the National Youth Congress. So I'm also the Secretary General of that National Youth Congress. So I am involved in two places. That one is the opposition activist, and one is the youth empowerment things. So for youth empowerment things, that many times we have to talk with the government, especially with the Minister Amin. So at that time, it is really important. I want to explain the reason. Because I spoke out to the public and also to the minister that I really appreciate that now the current government and opposition and ethnic groups are trying to run the peace building. But to my opinion, that all of those stakeholders were taught to hate each other, taught to defeat each other for many decades. So now, according to the new situation, they try a lot to shake each other's hand. So I really appreciate that they dare to do that, even though they were under a lot of pressure and a lot of influence from the past. But I honestly told them that I don't believe that this kind of peace will be the sustainable one, because that people still have the hatred and or the like the trauma from the past. So that only possible way to build the real sustainable peace is among the youth. Because now among the youth that we have got the chance to talk to the Kachin youth and also Korean, and we can communicate. So we know each other. Before that, those Kachin people and those Korean people, they think that Burmese people are hating them, killing them, repressing them. But in the reality, they found out that it is not true, only because of the system, only because of the dictatorship. So that in that way, that we can communicate each other and we can build trust. And I'm sure that all of the youth, most of the youth in this age will be the taking part in the leadership of the country in the future. So that after 20 years, so in the new scenario, that those you already had the experience working together, trust together. So this is really important to empower the youth. This is the reason.
Christopher.
I get so engaged. It's fantastic to hear this. So youth is the future. We all know that, and we have to support that, of course, and engage and stimulate it. I'm thinking a lot right now about this moving forward, and we have to move forward, and we have to move forward in the right way. Like Michaela said, I mean, there's lots of economic investments coming in now, also Swedish companies, and it's good. Economic development is good, but it has to be done in the real way. It has to be a bit carefulness sometimes. There's a lot of land grabbing going on in Burma right now, which creates a lot of protests and demonstrations and civil unrest. So, I mean, these companies coming into Burma now really has to be serious about human rights issues. I think that is one of the crucial issues moving forward in the right way. I also think of all the donor money coming into the country right now. It's a lot of money coming in. And I mean, supporting real actors in Burma that actually come there for their right reasons, not only created because there is money available. I think that is an important issue moving forward also, really looking into that. And I think what you are saying here about the history and the culture, what I hear from you and your friends, it's a very militarized society throughout the society. I mean, there's a lot of non-violent actors and organizations and traditions as well, but you cannot hide from that it's a militarized society. And this is going to be a long process, of course, to change this. This is going to be to try to build a peace culture for the future. And I absolutely agree that the youth is the important thing. But to engage also with the militaries that want change. I mean, there are those that don't want change, but there are actually those that do want change. And I to engage in that dialogue and to have that sort of a building. We had seminars in Maysot. Michaela was there as well, with ethnic military groups on the border between Thailand and Burma. And we engaged with them. We had seminars with them. We talked security sector reform. We talked DDR, which is demobilization and reintegration and disarmament issues. Very sensitive topics. But now it's possible to talk about these issues. So let's talk about them, move forward in the right way, and always keeping human rights in perspective. I think that's crucial.
Not to curb any enthusiasm here, but the most critical voices would describe the situation in Burma as the perfect setup. I mean, you have started a reform process, and you get all this money, and you get the donors, the foreign aid donors. Everyone is running to Burma right now. But still, it doesn't take a backlash to make things bad. They just have to pull the brakes, stop the process. And I'm sure, you asked the question, I'm sure that no foreign investment would withdraw only with a break on the reform process. Maybe on a backlash, but never on a break. But still, the military would be in power. So I mean, isn't this an extraordinary smart strategy? More than 10 years old, by the way, from the military to actually get all the money but still be in power.
But I think it's what Moe says about trying to find a step-by-step reform, because there's so much to lose for the current leadership that a total fast, quick and pushed reform process of the constitution will put those individuals at such personal risk that they would just refuse. but a slow reform process, and that's why it's so important to actually listen to the petition, which according to internet, at least now, some sources say 3.3 million people have signed the petition to amend this certain paragraph of the constitution. And that's the paragraph that gives 25% of the seats to the military. And then the constitution states that you need to have more than 75% of the votes in order to have any changes. So this is the clause that gives all the power to the military. And a constitutional reform that could just tweak this could then start a dialogue that would include naturally civil society, that would be based on the civil society dialogue. And then you can see a democratization process that will hopefully go hand in hand with the peace process and the transition to market economy. And then I think that the FDIs will hopefully, if they're responsible, and that's a big if, and that's a different seminar, then it can have a very positive effect.
Eva first, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to mention an initiative that Sida has taken to have a dialogue with Swedish big companies being present in the countries where we are working with Swedish development cooperation. And the aim of this dialogue is to talk about resilient production long term, and that of course include also aspects of human rights and democratization. We have just started this network, but I think it's an interesting way of influencing this, at least the Swedish companies, like HM, which is active in Burma. They have started up some fabrics in Burma.
No, just a small point. Despite enthusiasm, I mean, absolutely, the pressure must still be on the regime. I mean, it cannot be lifted up completely, you know. I mean, the eyes must still be on it in the international dialogue, and that pressure can be kept on political, diplomatic level with the development cooperation agreements that are being signed. And as I said, everything has to be based on sort of respect for the human rights. And the Rohingya situation you mentioned previously here is absolutely crucial to keep putting the eyes on. But the Rohingyas are not the only ones in the country. It's not the only ethnic minority that have problems. There are many different groups that have problems, but it's very highlighted right now on the Rohingyas, of course. But the pressure must still be there. So you have to do the trick of doing both, keeping pressure but still moving forward and enthusiastically support good initiatives, I think.
I would like to open up for questions from the floor. In case you ask a question, you need a microphone. It's coming from over there. So does anyone have a question for anyone in the panel? Yes, over here.
Hello. Hi. Yeah. My name is Anna, and I would like to hear more about like how you include the women in the peace process while working in Burma, because we can see that in militarized societies they are way more patriarchal. Say like that, yeah. And like women get less space. How do you not so you don't forget this? The half part of the Burman population, basically.
Women participation in the peace process. Who wants to start?
I think our guests should start.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, that a lot of women organizations are involved in the peace building process in many different activities, with many different activities. So there are also one big women organization called the Women Organization Network. So it includes like more than 30 women organization in it. So one of the Korean women is taking the leadership role in that organization. And they are also involved in a lot of the demonstration, a lot of the awareness raising, and they even go to the refugee camps and also go to the conflict area and conducting the trainings and organizing a lot of activities. And many times they are also meeting with the ethnic leader and political opposition leader and also with the government leader. So actually they are involving a lot. But in the ceasefire process, in the discussion, there are very less women involving. Only the very top official women from the ethnic groups, they can involve. So whenever we complain about that, and those women organizations are also involving, complaining to both to the government and to the ethnic sides. But eventually, both sides respond in the same way. That now they are just talking about the ceasefire. They are not in the peace building yet. So it is about the military thing. So only after the ceasefire, they will invite all the stakeholders, women, youth, all the indigenous, and all different groups. So this is what they reply, and this is what I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to agree what is being said, and that's just because of that reason, I mean, peace cannot be built between only the men and between militaries laying down arms. I mean, the women has to be included, and the women organizations, civil society organizations has to be included. And when I said before, we work with 10 to 15 different organizations in Burma, and several of them are women organizations, very excellent, strong, and good women that can participate in these discussions if anybody thought anything differently. I mean, it is absolutely important that these actors are put forward. So I mean, yeah, just a straight answer. I can say a lot more, but time is running. Sorry.
Isn't it also the case, at least that's my experience, that in the democratic opposition and among the ethnic minorities, there are a lot of active women organizations, and a lot of women are active there. It's not exactly the same on the other side of the fence. I mean, it is a militarized society, and in every top position in a state or local governments, there are men. I mean, is that a correct description?
Yes, it's true. Especially that, like in ethnic area, there are more women involved in the decision making, because that most of the ethnic groups and ASI group, they have the contact with the international organization for a long time, so they already know how to. They have to empower the women, give space to the women. But for the organization in the mainland, inside, so in the Burmese area, they didn't really have any contact with the international organization before, so that they are not really knowing yet. And still a lot of the discrimination to the women, not only by the government, actually by the society, even from the family. The mothers are discriminated to the daughters, and then brothers are also discriminated to the sister, like this.
Yeah, Eva.
Yes, SIDA is supporting many initiatives to improve women's participation in these processes, but we also have to be aware of that can in itself create conflicts. As you said, you have men on one side and you have women and ethnic groups on the other side. And when we talk about, we also have a support to health and sexual and reproductive health. And that, of course, addresses mainly women. And that in itself might be a conflictive issue to talk about sexual and reproductive rights. So we talk a lot in SIDA and at the embassy about the necessity to be very conflict sensitive when we decide on our supports.
Okay, we have another question from there, at least two. We can take them in a row then. And then,
Thank you very much to the whole panel. It's been really interesting to listen to your opinions. My name is Anami. I've been living and working in Myanmar since 2007, mainly with women's political engagement and participation. And just one quick comment and then a question to Komotwe. The comment, there was a study conducted very recently by BBC Media Action and looking at citizen engagement and the reform process. And just to kind of add on to what you were saying, that more than 60% of people that were a part of this study, I haven't looked into the sample sizes in that yet, but they said that they had never heard about any of the government reforms in the last couple of years. Yeah. So, I mean, it appears to be a very elite-driven change that, is able to garner a lot of media attention and all the rest. But for the vast majority of people, those changes aren't really being felt. I mean, I think that came across quite clearly in what you were saying. But just to add to this, so this is just a recent study that's just come out. And then I have a question for Komotwe, because I'm also very concerned about this. And you mentioned before when you were talking that the Western nations and other governments wanting to inform in the process need to keep on the political pressure to get constitutional reform and so on. At the same time, as we have been hearing, there are economic interests advancing. Do you think that this dual agenda is going to make it difficult for the political pressure to actually be effective when it's so clear that increasingly there are economic interests in setting up businesses? And just if you could elaborate a little bit more on your perspective on that. Thanks.
Hi, let's take one more question.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Charlotte. I come from the Social Democratic Students Burma Network, and we also have a democracy project right now in Maysart, but next year we're moving into Burma. I would like to ask, thank you very much for a very interesting seminar. Thank you for coming, Matway. I would like to ask you a little bit about how you see in now 2014, Burma has been the host of ASEAN, and next year, 2015, it is the election. And what would you like to see as the most important things to happen for a successful development?
Okay, so it's two questions, mainly from Moe.
Okay, so that let me clarify the first question that you asked about what will be how international economics helps and like investor we affect to the current situation. So that I was also thinking to give more comment about that. So actually that now the current government is I am not very good at English, so I will tell how I understand. So I would say that the current government seems like they are buying the peace and they are buying the good image, better image for themselves with the international help. Because a lot of money, a lot of settlement for the debts are getting from the international. So they have got chance to open the country's market and economy a little bit. Now, actually, our country economy is not really rising. But there are more, I mean, like for example, like some of my friends, even myself, can buy the car now because they changed the car permit procedure. So it is not really developing. So the government is really, I think, clever. They're playing with the international help and they are pleasing to some class of the people, especially the middle class. They are pleasing them. And at the same time, they are also helping to the crony, the rich people. And those rich people are representing to the people in rural a lot with many land confiscation and business economic monopolizing. So that, and again, it seems like government is trying to play again because that they are pushing a lot to the ethnic groups to sign for the nationwide ceasefire agreement before August. Because they know that EU, especially EU and US, I really mentioned about EU many times in this panel. You will maybe notice that because EU is very much ready to jump into our economic development. So that it is, but one thing blocking them, one thing stopping them is without the nationwide ceasefire agreement, it is not very good to deal with this government. So the government is trying to push all the ethnic and stakeholders to sign for the ceasefire agreement. So I think EU should really, really careful about this. Because we cannot sure that if government really want the real peace or only the business economic opportunity. And also we need to think that if international investment are coming, where those investment will go to? Because we in our country, like a few, like couple of people are owning almost half of the country. So most of the people are in very less income.
What about the second question? The most important thing for, if you would point out one
what
thing.
I want to see in 2015 is, okay, according to my emotion, I want to see Aung San Suu Kyi became the president and then he won the election. This is what I want to see because that NLD already won the election since 1990, and Aung San Suu Kyi should become the president for at least 2 times, 3 times. But according to the current situation, it is, I can't really say what will happen. So I think that the best is like most part of the power opposition got. Opposition will get the most part of the power, but still the current government and military, ex-military, get some power. It will be the best. But I cannot say who should be the president. And to be honest, that I don't really see that Aung San Suu Kyi will be the president in 2015. So the best is, I don't know, one most. I mean, like some. They also mentioned that some of the part of the government is also willing to change. So I hope that someone who really will to change will become the top power, and Aung San Suu Kyi also have got like more power than now. So this is the best scenario for the 2015. I wish she became the president, but it is not really possible.
Okay, sorry, so because we have running out of time. Yes. But does anyone of you other panelists here would like to make a few final comments before we close this seminar? Yep.
Just a couple of reminders. There is no real democracy and peace in Burma yet. Don't get that impression. There's a long process to go. There's lots of things to be done. This is very important. Constitutional reform is the absolute mostly important thing, absolutely. And when it comes to the ceasefires, those are not peace agreements. That is just to start a process towards peace. And just a reminder, the biggest reason to war is usually bad peace agreements. So you have to make sure that you actually get good peace agreements, sustainable peace agreements. The situation is extremely fragile right now, so be careful moving forward. But let's move forward enthusiastically anyway.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
I totally agree. Let's hope for two steps forward and one back instead of the other way around. There's also one thing that I'd like to add, and that's actually what we haven't discussed, which is the environmental changes that the country is going through, and what's happening as it's opening up, the land grabbing, the biodiversity that exists in this country, and how it supports the rest of the region with energy through its waters, and what is happening when this is changing. And that's something that really needs to be looked at from the international community to assist those in the country who wants to work with this, because we shouldn't forget that the processes in Myanmar are nationally owned, and we are invited for the time being. It's not like a lot of other conflicts where we see the UN acting under Chapter 7 or something similar. No, we're invited, and we need to work in that framework, nothing else.
One final question. Do you actually believe in a fair election next year? Do you think the election process will be fair enough and make it possible for the democratic opposition to actually run for a number of seats?
In the short way, I don't believe. I don't believe there will be the fair election in 2015. Even all of the stakeholders said it was fair after the election. It must be something. There must be something deal, because if we can really hold a fair election, the scenario will be like what I said. Aung San Suu Kyi will become the president, and then he will win landslide. So if the election will be fair, but to be fair, free and fair election, we need to amend a lot of articles in Constitution, not only 436, also the 59F, the presidential criteria. So if we can amend, and if we can also, there will be no fraud in the election, so it will be like that scenario. So that in that situation, if Aung San Suu Kyi became the president and the opposition took all the power, so there will be big clash between the ex-military and cronies. And so that, for the last comment, I want to say that as far as I know, as far as I talk with all the stakeholders, they all want to change. The government, cronies, ethnic, opposition, everyone wants to change. But only the problem is what they will benefit from the change. So that we need someone or a group who can coordinate for all the people to reduce their fear from the change.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the audience as well.
Thank you.